Hello everyone, good morning. So we are discussing today. Today is April 29th, and today we'll be discussing data extensions. Under data extension, there are a couple of areas which you people have to keep an eye on. So I'll be explaining with the help of a notes, and here you'll be in the listen only mode. Okay. When it comes to data extensions, while creating data extensions, we have three types: standard, filtered, and random data extension. Okay. Standard, filtered, and random data. When you create standard data extension, then only you can create filter data extension or random data extension. So this has been recorded so that it will be useful for you people. So standard data extension will help you to create filter data extension or random data extension. So standard data extension is required to create filter data extension or random data extension. So in Marketing Cloud, we have to create the data extension which is standard first. So while creating standard data extension, standard D, in future I'll be referring it as DE. D stands for data extension. So you'll be having three screens, right? So screen one, if you remember while creating screen one, you'll be giving properties. Properties which will be having name, description, sendable or not. These are the things which will be found in screen one. Then comes screen two, and while creating data extension, if you're creating in Email Studio, so you can create data extension in Email Studio. You can create data extension in Contact Builder. Contact Builder. So standard data extension. So Email Studio, you can create it in Email Studio and you can create it in Contact Builder. There is some minor changes which we will be referring later. In screen 2, we will be going with data retention policy, which can be on or off. By default, it is off. Okay, when you turn it on, we'll see what will happen. Screen 3. Screen 3 is related to your fields. Screen 3 is related to fields. You can also refer it as column names. Fields, column names, or you can also refer it to attributes. Try to use this technical term called fields. In general, it might be a column name or column names, and then it will be fields. So while creating column names, screen 3 is very important. Screen 3. In screen 3, you will have a field name. Then comes data type, length, data type length. Then comes primary key, nullable field, default value. This is how the screen looks like for you. You'll have a field name, you'll have data type, you'll have a length, you'll specify the primary keys yes or no, nullable whether it is yes or no, then this is the default value which is optional. Okay, default value is optional. So field name, it's user wish. Data type, there is a huge list of data type which you people will be doing. So we'll be discussing on data type. Okay, data type is important. I'll go one by one. So when it comes to data type, the major supported one is number, text, date, okay, Boolean, and many others. Okay. So number, text, date, Boolean, decimal, locale. We have a data type called phone. We have a data type which is very, very important called email address. Email address data type, number data type, text data type, date, Boolean, decimal, locale, phone. Probably this is what I can recall. If there are any missing, I'll explain it. If you want to store email address, so let's go one by one. If I want to store email address in your data extension, because we are doing email marketing. We have to store email address, right? Don't store it in text. Very important. Don't store email address in text. It should be only one email address data type. Okay, you cannot have more than one. So numbers, we know it. So with respect to email address, you can store email address in text, but preferably don't do it because email sending will be affected. Numbers, very straightforward. I want to store 12. I want to store minus 45,258. So if you want to store any positive numbers, negative numbers, or if you want to store 0, then it will be stored in number. If you want to store text, basically text will help you to store names. Okay, names can be the first name, the last name, the middle name, the city, state, country, city, state, country, anything which is resembling a name. City, state, country, it might be even your continents, anything which resembles names will be stored under text. Text will have length. When it comes to text, length is applicable. Length can be from 1 to 4,000. A minimum length is 1 and a maximum length is 4,000. Text can be increased after creation. Can be increased after creation. Whenever you're creating a text data type, you have to specify the length. So what is the length of email address? Length of email address is by default 254. It cannot be reduced. It cannot be increased. Okay. So names, it can be first name, last name. These are the ones which will be stored in text data type. If you want to store email address, anything which resembles email address format, abcd@gmail.com. Anything which resembles like this. At symbol, then a domain, then comes the username like this. So anything which resembles this will be stored in email address data type. Anything which you want to store numbers, positive, negative, it will be stored in numbers. Anything which you want to store like this, first name, last name, middle, city, state, country, anything resembling the names, store name, product name, all will be stored in majorly text. Then comes date, as the name says, it is by default it is US date format. If you want, you can change it and store it. You have to do some research on that one. Good. That is about date. And if you want to store Boolean, Boolean can store true or false. It can store true or false. Sometimes it can store yes or no. It's one I'm just saying. Rarely we use 1 and 0. Okay, rarely use 1. What you can store? You can store true, you can store false, you can store yes or no. You can go with 1 or 0. So if you want to store true or false, you will be going with Boolean. So then comes decimal. Decimal, as the name says, you can store currency, majorly used for currency storing. So if you want to store minus 25.05 dotted decimals, you'll be going with this. I want to store 0.0, you'll go with this. I want to store 99.99, I want to go with this. So basically decimal will help you to store positive values, negative values with dotted decimal. Okay, that is, you want to store something like this, majorly used for currency. Without dotted decimals, then you'll be going with number. Okay, but there is a limitation. I want you people to understand what is the limitation, and you people will be letting me know the limitations of it. Okay, as and when you progress. Length, a minimum of 1 and maximum of 4,000. After you create data type text, it can be increased after creation. Then comes locale and phone. Locale, I'll explain you as and when we progress. So we have email address, number, text, date, Boolean, decimal, locale, and phone. Okay, these are the major data types. So while creating the data extension, you'll specify the field name of your wish. Then comes data type, very important. Length should be given to text and decimal. Okay, these two will expect the length. Others doesn't. Email address has a length which is 254. Email address is 254. It cannot be increased. It cannot be decreased. Then comes very importantly, primary key. What is primary key? Okay. Primary key is a unique identifier. Primary key is a unique identifier. Primary key is a unique identifier. What is unique identifier? This is the check box. You have to select it if you want to make it as a primary key. Primary key will always represent a unique identifier. It can be number, it can be alphanumeric, it depends. When you specify the field name, then you'll specify the data type length. This you have to decide way ahead of your data extension creation. Example, what can be a primary key? What can be a primary key? Primary key, it can be of any data type. Majorly, it will be university seat number, your Aadhaar, bank account number will all be the example of a primary key. USN, Aadhaar, bank account number, your PAN number, but don't store all these information because they are sensitive. Just for your example, what can be a primary key? Primary key can be USN, Aadhaar, bank account number, your unique ID, all will be an example of primary key. Nullable, you have to decide nullable. What is nullable? Nullable means it's an optional field. Means there might be a chance of not having the value. For example, the middle name. Some people will have a middle name, some people might not have a middle name. Correct? Some people might not be willing to provide their gender, whether it is male or female. Okay? There might be chances that we are missing with city. So some values might be present, might not be present while providing the information. Example, let's take an example of when you fill a form, application form. You might have done it a couple of times before, right? So let's take an example of driving license. Okay. Driving license, or it might be the passport number. So there might be chance that some people might not have it. Driving, I don't have the driving. That's fine. I might create it. I might go and apply for driving license later. Passport, I might not have a passport number because I have not applied, because I have not gone through with it. So there are chances that some fields will be an example of nullable. So nullable, be very clear, nullable cannot be a primary key. Okay? Nullable cannot be. Middle name, gender cannot be primary key. Very importantly, what cannot be primary key? What cannot be primary key? Keep this in mind. This is also important. Gender cannot be primary key. Okay? Gender cannot be primary key. City, state, okay, country are best examples which cannot be a primary key. USN, Aadhaar, bank account number, PAN, anything which you consider as ID and unique can be a primary key. Nullable, sometimes or sometimes you might be having a situation that there is no field value. There is no field value. Then you'll be going with nullable. Last but not the least, so default value. Default value means if they don't provide it, let's assume that if they don't provide the country, I want to go with the value India or Indian. Okay, default value. If they don't provide it, it will be having a default value, some value. Okay, most of the time default value is placed not for primary because this is repetitive. anything which is repeated cannot be primary key. Okay, anything which is repeated cannot be a primary key. Okay, when you create a data extension, this is very important. Field name, data type, length, primary key, nullable, or default value. Okay. So to understand this better, just a minute. Okay, when you have a default value, so while creating a data extension, these are the things. Now, let us try to understand with the help of Excel. So I'm just trying to create a data. Okay, I'm just trying to create a data. If you understand in Excel or anywhere, so that's what we'll be replicating in Marketing Cloud. I'll just take an example of any number of tables. You can take any table. For now, I'll keep it simple. So I want to store information. I want to store some basic information of my friends. Okay, I'll go with first name. I'll go with last name. Okay, I'll go with gender. I'll go with mobile number. I'll go with email or email address. Okay, and which city they belong to. Just an example. So with respect to first name, it will be text. It can take up to 25 characters. Example. So the first name is, and his last name is More. Gender is male. Mobile number. So 9916123456. Email. He doesn't have an email. City. He is from Israel. So now email is optional. So this should be nullable because some friends doesn't have the email ID. Some friend doesn't have the email ID. Let's go with the second person. I have one more friend called Vivek. Okay. He doesn't have the last name. Okay. Then he has number. Then email address vivek@gmail.com. So his city is Mysore. Now, sometimes there might be a scenario that I'm just giving an example. I forgot my first name of the friend. So because I know him from the last name, I know his name from last name. He doesn't have a mobile number. He doesn't have an email ID, but he belongs to city Bangalore. Why? He doesn't have it. Very simple. So while creating any table, okay, while creating any table like this, so be sure about this one. Okay, what is mandatory? What is optional? What is repeating? So anything which is repeating cannot be primary key. In this scenario, mobile number or email address can be primary key, but we need a value for this. You cannot store value without primary key. Okay. Now, mobile number, sometimes it is depending on data type. So technically this is a text because it cannot store number at this length. I'm just going with that example. Okay. First name, last name, gender, mobile number, email, city. So you can create every time you might not have all the values. Now, this is friends. Okay. Now let's take an example of products. I sell some products. Okay. I usually promote some products as an example. So I have a product ID, product key, then comes product name. Available, okay, available or not, what the cost of it. Something like this. I'm just going with very simple example here. So I have a product. So always the product name, for example, it starts with something called SKU, stock keeping unit, and it will be having 3 digits number or 4 digits, 0012. Product name, I'll just go with the product name called floor mat. Available, it is Boolean. Okay, available, it is Boolean. So it will be yes. What is the cost of it? It is $25.36. I'm just giving an example. So this should be decimal. This should be Boolean. This is text, obviously. This is the primary key. Because this number or this text, which is SKU underscore 0012, is unique always. SKU underscore 0009. Okay. This is a ceiling fan. Is it available as of today? No. What is the cost of it? It is 125 rupees 25 cents. Okay. So in this scenario, product ID is text primary key. Product name, it is text, but it is not a primary key. Available, it is Boolean. This is decimal. Okay. You people have to start mapping yourself with any data what you see. Any data. Okay, it can be anything. So let's take an example of attendance. Okay. I'm just taking an example of attendance. So I need a student ID. I need a student ID. I need student name. Try to follow the consistency here. So student ID, student name. Okay. Then comes the date. Then comes present. Present, if it is yes, no, yes, no. So you can format it in a better way, but I'm just giving an example. Student ID, student name, date. You can go like this, or you can create in such a way that it looks like your attendance sheet. Okay, it looks like your attendance sheet. So depends however you want to create it. So let's take an example of student ID. Underscore ID. Whatever you see in table format in the real world, bring it into here. So student ID. So student ID always starts from STU underscore STU underscore 001. Then comes date here. For example, what is the date today? Today it is April 29. Okay, this is the date. This is the student ID. So exactly same way I'll go with student ID 2. I'll go with only 5. Comes 3. Then comes 4. Very important. This is data. You can see any data. So 29. So if he is present, so date will be there. So if he is present, the answer will be yes, no, yes, yes, and yes. So then comes the next date, that is April 30th, 2024. However you want to store it. So everyone is yes here. Then comes May 1st, May 01, 2024. So the first person is absent, the remaining people are yes. Okay. So here the student ID is a primary key. Primary key, always remember unique. So here yes or no, because it's storing Boolean. Then comes the date. So which date they are present or absent. So anything which you people start seeing, try to map it. Try to map it to a table and try to recognize what could be a primary key, what is optional. This cannot be optional. It has to be yes or no. It cannot be primary key because it is should be repeated. Yes or no, yes or no, yes or no should be repeated. Okay, this is how your data looks. I'm just giving an example. So attendance, sets, notes. This is data extensions. You can create any data extension. Create only if it is required for your marketing efforts. Okay. This is about all the field name, data type, length, primary key, nullable, or default value. Default value. These are the, I know it might not be easy at day one, so it depends on your educational background also, which we can discuss. Based on that, we can start moving, keep learning more and more things. Okay. I'll stop the screen sharing and I'll stop the recording. So I'll keep the forum open for your questions.